Welcome to the Radical Rhythm Podcast. Today we have a guest interview. We have Caress Fitch from Seattle, Washington. And I would list all of her credentials as to what she does. But let's just start with she's known as the Kinky Health Coach. Welcome, Caress, to the podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Tony. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start with your I this is the Radical Rhythm podcast, but your business is called The Rebellious One. What is the title of your practice and what exactly do you do?
Okay. The business is Mindful Passions International. We were feeling really aspirational that day. But the philosophy behind Mindful Passions is one of rebellious wellness, which is all about individual empowerment and taking a holistic approach in everything that we do while bringing in inclusivity and accessibility, because these are things that I often have found missing in my own journey just as a person on this planet trying to receive healthcare services and expanding what we look at as health to include our relationships, including our intimate and sexual relationships.
And that leads us to our topic for the day. Our topic is boundaries, and it's Valentine's week, and it sounds negative, Caress. I don't know. Can we flip this upside down and make boundaries something to get excited about?
Absolutely. Boundaries are like a permission slip. Boundaries are my way of telling other people what they're signing up for when they're interacting with me. But boundaries are not rules because my boundaries are about how I move when other people do things. Rules would be more like me saying, well, you can't do that, and trying to project my control onto somebody else.
So
So
it's an attraction. It's a welcoming in to the world of caress.
it's an invitation. Yes.
And that
Yes.
sounds very sexy. And I love your microphone, by the way. Very
Thank
sexy.
you.
So where do we start? Let's talk about being single first, rather
Hmm.
than being in a relationship.
Yeah.
And going out on a date back in the old days, 30, 40 years ago when I was dating, right? Um, it seemed very simple to my adolescent and 20-year-old brain that I was female, I dated males, and the male made the advance, and the female, not that I was submissive, but it's almost like I did, this dates me, a rope a dope kind of strategy of receiving and giving clues to keep going forward. In today's dating age, Caress, it seems very different.
It is very different. One of the things that I think has really shifted the tide is that we as a culture have become more accepting of various ways people think, the various ways that people's brains operate. And some people operate better when we're really explicit and intentional with our language and we say exactly what we need up front. And that practice of being open and being authentic and saying, this is what I need in order to feel safe with you has become more accepted. And I think the tide's shifting. So it's becoming the cultural norm.
And I tell this story. My brother-in-law would refer to me. He said, when Tony got gay, that was my favorite thing. It's a little bit more complex than when I like got an infection, right? Got gay.
Tiny
Um,
bit, tiny bit.
but I really struggled, and I tell this story that my band called me Lonely Lips because as a woman with another woman, I didn't know how to approach somebody. I didn't know how to have that conversation. And okay, we're dating myself again in the 90s. again, the topics of boundaries and consent weren't something that was done all the time. And because I had the short hair and I was attracted to the person with the long hair, and somehow I became the butch and I had to make the move. And I was called Lonely Lips because I didn't know how to do that. Um,
Absolutely.
how does one in today's day and age um, broach that conversation of consent and boundaries?
Oh gosh, wow. It sounds like it's something that's really hard, but it's actually something that we're doing all the time. We see it even just in text message exchanges when someone will send a message that doesn't go over quite well and the response back is a sour face emoji.
Mm,
That's one of the ways that we are expressing what our boundaries are, what is and is not okay for us. So just allow yourself to react and respond. The more natural we are with it, the more normalized this whole process of having boundaries and talking about boundaries and sharing boundaries becomes. And it's a lot easier to be able to say, hey, I really, really like you, but I didn't like this part of what we did today.
mm. And to take it personally as a slam, um, to hold it in and have resentments is not cool, right? This open
Right.
flow of communication is something that's really important today.
It
Always. It was
is.
back then, but there are
It
different,
was back then, but
expectations.
we made so many assumptions back then. We made so many assumptions. I recently rewatched The Love Boat, and I wanted to know if it would hold up to the test of time, and a lot of the episodes do. But you can see that there were so many assumptions just being made between people in any sort of connection. No matter what the relationship was, they were making assumptions. And we're less comfortable as a culture making us so many of those assumptions now. Now we're asking the question. I mean, over the last 10 years, we've seen this resurgence in people asking what pronouns are, what pronouns a person uses. This is a huge piece of evidence of us stepping away from some of the assumptions we used to make.
Yeah, yeah. So, if you're a single, um, I think whether you're single or not, openness, transparency, being authentically yourself is of the utmost importance.
It
And
is.
asking someone out and breaking up seems to be something that's done via text a lot. Um,
Mm.
is that um I don't even want to say proper etiquette. Um, I was with a woman when someone broke up via text, and I thought, my God, that has to be the rudest way to end something that has gone on for over a year.
I see that driven by fear so often
Mm,
that the relationship has broken down to the point that even just normal communication is something that's fraught. And so these text breakups are coming from a place of fear most of the time.
so tell me about emotional intelligence and how that relates to this. It seems that one would have to be pretty competent and in understanding their own feelings to be able to communicate to somebody else. How can one work on their emotional intelligence, which is kind of the foundation to the communication?
It is. It is. And it seems like it's going to be a really big, hard thing, but it's actually one thing. Just remember that the person you're communicating with is just as vulnerable and scared as you are.
My apologies for interrupting the program today, but I need to tell you about a course that I offer called Aphrodite's Secret. This course helps you overcome obstacles in your sex life. It helps you discover new forms of sexual expression and improve the relationship you're in or improve your skills for the next relationship you're in. This is Valentine's Day, and I have the course on sale from $347 down to $99. But you do have to purchase it this week, Valentine's Day, up until the 17th, 2024, to purchase the sale price. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. You're also known as, like, as I mentioned before, the Kiki Healthy Coach. And one of the things that I like about kink is that, and I did a whole show on the hanky code at one time, um, is folks know what they want and they know what they want to receive and what they want to do, and they negotiate from there. And there's a very open communication in the kink community about a scene somebody is about to have. Do you
Absolutely.
feel that kinky folks are more advanced in this communication
I
game?
do. I do. I do. I think that the kinky community is more advanced in this simply because we have normalized the need for clear and authentic communication. That's it.
And why do
We've,
you think that is?
I've not actually thought about that.
Yeah, I've pondered it before and I thought, well, you are holding somebody's safety in your own hands.
Absolutely.
And as somebody that would be a more dominant person in the kink community, you want to keep that person safe. And someone who's more submissive on the bottom end of the scene, Lord knows you don't want to be
Mm,
permanently maimed, you know?
absolutely. There is such an emphasis on safety in the kink community, and it's bidirectional. And the fact that it's bidirectional is what gives it such power. It's that glue that connects the relationship.
So if somebody's single and they have these kinky desires, where do they start?
Go to a munch, my friend.
What is a
Make some
munch?
friends. A munch. Oh, I love munches. Munches are social gatherings by people created by people who happen to be kinky. And it's going to be in a place that you might find yourself eating a Sunday brunch in on any other Sunday. It's going to be a vanilla space. So it's going to be a safe space, a public space.
Okay,
And we
so
use
it's
safe
safe
with
to go.
parentheses.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a discussion and munching, right? Just eating
Yes.
something and chatting and meeting people.
Just it's a meet and greet and a chance to get to know people in the community. And most importantly, to find out if these are people that you can feel safe with. That's the most important aspect of being at a munch.
So part of what you do, and there's so many things that you do, is holistic health. Can you talk a little bit about being kinky and how that helps your health or hurts your health? I mean, so many therapists are ignorant of the whole kink community, kink kind of activities, that they
Mhm.
think that it's negative or hurtful or abusive and not a mentally healthy place to go.
Which is unfortunate because I think there's just been some research that's come out showing that people in the kink community do have higher markers for mental health, for high mental health resilience
Mm.
and resilience from trauma than people who do not practice kink. And it's being attributed to the intentionality with which kinky people create relationship. The fact that we get into the weeds and we talk about consent, we talk about boundaries, and we basically fight for our relationships and connections.
Let's shift to partnered people, because we've been talking about
Mhm.
single people and establishing those boundaries from the beginning. What if you've been with somebody for a while in some kind of relationship, not defined here, and you would like to have a boundary conversation, a consent conversation, which in some ways wouldn't seem needed because you've been together for a decade or 2 years. Um, you want to talk about that a little bit?
I do. But first, as a practitioner of rebellious wellness, I have to say, why are we not talking about boundaries regularly in an ongoing relationship?
Uh,
Because in my human experience, realized I may wake up one morning, because this has happened. I love my partner dearly. I love him dearly, but I have a chronic pain condition, and some days don't touch me.
mm,
So my boundaries, my personal boundaries shift from day to day. And I just made the assumption that everybody's personal boundaries shift from day to day. So within an ongoing committed relationship, as part of safety in that relationship, one should be able to say, I'm not feeling it today.
mm.
And that's a boundary shift. So I would argue that we're always talking about our boundaries in a committed relationship. We just may not realize that we're talking about our boundaries in that committed relationship.
I messed up yesterday, Caress. You see, if you're watching this on YouTube rather than listening, I am showing a arm brace. Um, I have bad carpal tunnel, and I went out and shoveled really heavy snow yesterday. And the reason was I could not see letting my wife do it alone. And
Mm,
I should have said something because now I am in a bad way. And I, I'm just going to say this joke on the air. I was thinking about it. And if you're right handed and you're a lesbian, this is like having a broke dick. This means that I'm not going to be sexually active for a little while. And I might edit this
yeah.
part, but it made me think about it, about boundaries. And she did know, but she didn't know how bad it was.
Hmm.
And I was trying to be chivalrous, and I actually probably am the opposite now the next week or so that,
Yes.
um, yeah, I went too far, and now there's other things that she's gonna have to help me with.
Yeah. This was the lead domino. You shoveling snow was that lead domino, and it just kind of,
Yeah, I guess I should have talked about a boundary. I know your expectation is that I help you, but in this case, I'm pretty well in pain already, and I should have
hmm,
volunteered to do something else. But it is
absolutely.
Valentine's Day. We're doing this interview on Valentine's Day, and you know, so many folks I know, including my wife,
Hmm.
are anti Valentine's Day. It's she'll say every year it's a capitalistic conspiracy to sell material goods, and I love it. So I woke up to a lot of surprises this morning that she did for me, even though she doesn't believe in it, which was very sweet. And how are you
That's love.
celebrating Caress this year? How are you celebrating Valentine's Day?
Well, Valentine's Day this year is going to be a little bit low key. I'm recovering from surgery, so there are not a lot of physical things that are going to be happening, including cooking dinner. But I get a lovely meal ordered in. So,
And celebrate that way. Fantastic.
absolutely. And also, we kind of make every day Valentine's Day.
That's where I was taking the conversation. I mean, some people don't like Valentine's Day because they think that we should be doing the things that we do for Valentine's Day, giving gifts, spending some extra
Mhm.
time with someone all year round.
And I would argue we don't necessarily need the gifts, but attention
Mm,
and time, because those are non renewable resources. Those are the things that you cannot get back. You can't make yourself have more attention. You can't make yourself have more time. And to have someone be willing to spend those things with you is huge.
It's
It's
the most
huge.
valuable resource we have, right? Is our time.
Absolutely. And I think it's pretty freaking awesome that there's somebody in the world who chose to spend the roughest parts of their days with me. Not just the good parts, because going on dates with somebody is always fun, but the day in, day out drudge,
Hmm.
laundry, shoveling snow, getting oil changes. The fact that somebody chooses to do those things with me, I think is pretty cool. So I'm going to celebrate that every day.
Amen. Tell me a little bit about boundaries and relationships. Do you have any clients that are polyamorous?
All of them.
All of them? And
All
and
of them.
and is boundary setting more important, just as important in poly relationships? If for those who are listening and don't know what that means, it's having multiple partners.
I think it's more important. And I say that with no shame and no shade to any of my lovely poly fam. We are such big hearts and we want to love everybody that sometimes our own boundaries get mushy. So we
Mhm.
spend a lot of time rebuilding and reinforcing boundaries and reminding that boundaries are an invitation, that they are your invitation for how to engage with you. And that if your invitation is creating stress in your life, maybe that invitation needs to be rewritten. Let's revisit that.
I would say I have as many poly clients as monogamous clients. And how does, I know this is a little off the topic, but how does one know that they're poly?
I think people know there's always a little desire to have friendships that are big and deep and emotionally intense. And then when the concept of polyamory gets introduced, a light bulb goes off. Bing.
Hmm.
And it's really just knowing language for it.
Maybe that we do another podcast at some point all about polygamy and well, not polygamy, polyamorous relationships because it is absolutely fascinating because I come from a monogamous background and I am monogamous. Um, Basically because I don't have enough emotional energy to go past one person. Philosophically, I would be for it.
Mhm.
Emotionally, can't do it. Um, and there's so much we could talk about, but our time is almost up. And I would
Oh,
love if folks, have found some of your words and concepts, something they'd like to talk about more or go a little bit further, how can they contact you?
you can find me at mindfulpassions.co, not com, .co, or on Instagram at the Kinky Health Coach.
Great. And I understand that you have an offer right now. And I'll put that underneath of the podcast. Oh, you get this free on YouTube. And maybe you're listening to this on YouTube right now. And later on, Caress, this will also be on your traditional podcasts on Apple and Spotify and other places as well, just the audio. Um,
Awesome.
so if someone is listening to this, we are on Valentine's Day 2024.
Mhm.
And what offer are you putting out there this week?
On Leap Day this year, I'm launching the 7-day Bond and Bloom Intimacy Challenge. And this is a 7-day deep dive in 30 minutes a day ish, with you and your partner or you and yourself to increase intimacy and connection in your relationship.
Oh, nice.
And
And
it works for long distance relationships too.
So to sign up for this challenge, we'll put the link there.
Mhm.
Is this something that costs money to be part of the challenge?
It is. This is a $69 challenge, and I'm going to give you a coupon code for half off for your listeners.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I do like the $69 part, but that's a whole other show that we absolutely can talk about.
Absolutely.
Any words of wisdom to leave our listeners with about their love life, about boundaries and consent?
Oh my goodness. Words of wisdom. The thing I keep finding myself saying most often is life is short and already challenging enough. You should play, you should love, and suffering should definitely be optional.
Mm, thank you so much, Caress, for being on the Radical Rhythm podcast today. And please look at underneath of the podcast here, and you will get Caress's information and that fantastic challenge. Thank you so much.
Thank you.